And now it's Deborah Kobylt live.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today to Deborah Kobylt Live. And thank you, Monica Parker, for joining us today to talk about lots of things, in particular, your latest book, Oops, I Forgot to Save Money. And it turns out I'm not alone. You also had other books as well that you've written. I think one of them just popped up on the screen, in fact, and that is called Oh My God, How Children See God. And another one of your books, Getting Wasted. We're not talking about drinking, people. We're talking about your waste. So we're going to talk about that, your incredible acting career, your speaking career, your one woman shows. Gosh, Monica, you've done an awful lot. So thanks for being here.
If you want me to take in ironing, I'll do that too. I'm I'm
Do you
I'm
iron? I'll be calling you.
I'm really
Um,
good at it.
but you're very witty, which is what I love about you. Let's start with your latest book because I know you're working on another as well. Oops, I forgot to save money. Tell us about it.
Well, it happens to be a true story. I was
Ah,
thinking about what I wanted to write, and I have a history of opening up the vault to my mistakes, failures, because I think I'm really relatable. And I think that if I am struggling with money, there are bazillions of people struggling with money. If I'm struggling with my weight, I'm not alone. So for some reason, I'm incredibly comfortable outing myself. And I find it to be it releases everything, and it actually allows me to look at me and go, how do I fix this, or do I need to fix this, whatever the it is. And so that's oops, I forgot to save money. It came about. I was thinking about I can no, and by the way, I'm married to a lovely, lovely man who is worse with money than I am. We're two artists living together and have for decades. And one of us said we have to be a grown up. I'm going to let you guess who
mm,
it is. And I decided I was going to figure out where this is coming from because money isn't just about money. Money is about
right.
everything. Money is about the way we perceive.
Control, right?
Well, it's about control, but it's also about fear. It's about emotions. It's about, um, I think it's such a huge conversation that nobody really talks about. It's about shame. It's about
Mm,
power for some people. It's about a lot of different things. And so I wanted to understand where I fit into that large spectrum of things. And I, mine absolutely comes from having had a war survivor mother and who struggled
mm,
to reinvent as a survivor, having and from having two kids who she didn't know what had happened to. One, my mother was married a couple of times and never well, and so
mm,
her when she was divorced from her first husband was when the war broke out, and my mother got a visa to Scotland, and her kids she left them. They were teenagers with a brother in Belgium, and she thought they'd be safe, and they weren't.
mm.
My brother ended up in Auschwitz and survived.
Oof.
My sister ended up surviving just by the miracle of odds. But my mother really had to reinvent herself in Scotland and worked as a housekeeper, which for a woman with enormous attitude, that was a huge fall from her idea of self. So
I'll
she
bet.
she loved the house she worked in, not the job. So she struggled and worked and saved and scrimped and convinced some banker to allow her to buy this huge house. So I was ultimately, when she met my dad, married him, and had that one time thing, I came about. And I grew up in this giant house and thought we were rich. No, we weren't. It was for her business, it was to make,
Ah,
present. And so I grew up in a life of presentation, not reality. And that
mm.
definitely affected me.
Now,
Yeah.
your mom also was a dressmaker. Is that correct? And she had a shop?
She was a fancier dressmaker. She was a
Mm.
couturier.
A
So,
couturier.
yeah, she had private clients, most of whom were wealthy. She had a shop when we moved to Toronto. She'd always had a business, but she grew this business, was quite successful. But being successful in a labor intensive job is a complicated thing. By the time you spend the money that you got from the deposit from your clients and get the fabrics and pay your workers and pay the business and do all of those things, you end up with very little. You're constantly borrowing time and money from Paul to pay Peter. It was one of those. And again,
Mm.
presentation. I grew up in a life where it all looked so fabulous. and wasn't. My mother was in debt. My mother had borrowed money from loan sharks. I became
Oh,
an actress, I'm fairly convinced, because I was the one who answered the phone from the age of 12 in various accents. No, she's not home. I'm sorry, you've wrong number, or whatever. That was me.
oh my goodness. Wow. Oh, wow. That's really something. Now, I want to point out, you said that she had this shop in Toronto. At this point, she made her way, and she was an immigrant, right? From Scotland to Toronto. And you
My
came, of course,
sister,
with her. So
right.
that wasn't so easy either, right?
Well, I was going to be 13. Yes,
Yeah,
I
hard
was.
time.
It was a tough time with parents who had never lived together, but in order to get permission to take me out of the country, she had to convince my father they'd start over. Big lie. And so
Mm.
for a few months, I lived with both my parents, which was the worst time in my life. They didn't like each other. And I just got bigger and bigger and bigger because I just was unhappy and was eating. And so when they split up again, my life got normal. Normal to me was living with a single mother,
Mm.
you know?
Talk to me about one day, one afternoon, when you were in that dress shop and your life changed by someone who walked into the door. Would you tell us about that?
Sure. I grew up to be a dress designer. When from the time I was very young, I could draw, and I'd always decided to be a dress designer. And so I worked for my mom after having gone to art school and having worked in a fabric shop. And my mother finally said, "Yes, you can come work for me." So I was 20 or 21, and I had lots of model girlfriends because those were the people who we dressed.
Yeah.
And one of the models came in and she brought a guy who was graduating from university, and he was doing his thesis project, and he needed dresses for his movie. And that man's name was Ivan Reitman. And so
Wow.
Ivan came into the shop and said he needed dresses. And I said, "Yeah, if I could have the lead." And he said, "No, but you can be a hooker." I went, "Okay." So I, I was on a set for a day as a hooker and sat around with other actresses and actors. And honestly, I instantly knew this was the circus I belonged in. And by the way, Eugene Levy was the coffee boy. He delivered
Wow.
coffee. I mean, everybody, we were babies, running the asylum, I think.
Wow. So then what happened? I
Well,
mean,
I
you
decided
were,
to be an
yeah,
actress, and I had
yeah.
no reason to decide this, but um, chutzpah, nerve, part of my whatever. I went and sold myself to a television station that was doing sort of gonzo. It was a very unusual television station at the time. They were looking for alternative programming, and I sold them an exercise show because I was pretty flexible. And they loved the idea of a fat girl in a leotard who could touch her toes and do back bends. And Ivan was the only director I knew, so I asked him to direct my show. Dan Aykroyd was my voiceover guy. Gilda Radner was my girlfriend, and she thought she was fat, and I didn't think I was. And it was an
Wow.
amazing show because I used to have all these guests come on to talk about weight and talk about body diversity. And it was the first time in my life that my family suddenly accepted me exactly as I was because I was on television and I was, you know, owning my body is really what I was doing.
Wow. What was the name of that show?
It had a terrible name. It was called the whole show was called City Women, but my segment, which I thought was a funny idea at the time, I called the Losers, meaning I was going to lose weight. But when you think about the Losers, it's a bad name.
Hmm.
It's a terrible name.
Very much a double entendre there. There's no
Yeah,
doubt about that
but
one.
it didn't work.
Did you feel like a loser? Were you losing weight? I mean,
No,
what was it, or all the? No, no. Okay.
I've never felt like a loser. That's not even in my head. No.
Yeah. No, you haven't, because as you said, and this is a common theme in each of your books, you just keep going. You were born with that kind of an attitude, right? Even if something just didn't quite work out, right? How do you handle that? Tell us.
I think, well, first of all, because my mother was resilience personified and my father
Mm,
wasn't. And my
right.
father, you always think that the person who is the dominant person is going to be the biggest influence. My
Hmm.
father, in some ways, was a bigger influence than my mother because he didn't have a life. I said when he died, he didn't leave footprints. He was so shy and so um, easily, he was like a cork being bobbed around and pulled in the direction of whatever. And he was a smart, lovely man who just hadn't found his place in the world. And when he died, and I had such a strong feeling about this, that I was never, ever going to be someone who didn't take charge of their life. I wasn't going to be a fork being pulled in other people's directions. So it was important.
Right. It's so interesting, the lessons we learn when you don't want to be something that you see growing up, right?
Right.
Very often those are the lessons that stick with us the most, right?
Definitely. I mean, we are, as much as we try to push back against our parents, so much of who they are becomes part of who we are. And
right. And that's part of the lesson right there. That's part of the lesson.
Absolutely.
Let's continue on about your acting career. So here you were, you wrote this show, Dan Aykroyd, Gilda Radner, and others. And you then since went on to do so much incredible work. And you've also worked with some incredible people, everyone from Anthony Hopkins, Kim Cattrall. I mean, so many. Would you talk to us, give us some nuggets about some of the experiences that you've had in the business that you'd like to share with our audience?
You know, I am really, I feel blessed. I've worked with some amazingly brilliant, talented people who are also really lovely human beings. Yeah. And Anthony Hopkins is one of the loveliest people I've ever worked with. I've worked with a lot. I mean, I don't attract complicated people. I'm not interested in them. I'm interested in good people, and people with a sense of humor really, really matters to me. And so that things can roll off you and you can move forward. So in that way, yes, I've had a very diverse career. Many, many years ago, Kim was my maid of honor, and I had introduced her to, I'm going to say this, one of her husbands, and who was a friend of mine, and I was maid of honor at her wedding. You know, life is life, and we've moved on. Not that I have anything negative to say. I don't see very much of Kim anymore, just because.
Hey, you're moving in different directions. Sure.
Lives. Right.
Yeah. I mean, but that's how it is, right? I'm sure Anthony Hopkins isn't coming over for dinner every week either, right?
It's so annoying.
Come on, Anthony.
Seriously, I've invited him time and time again.
We'll have to take care of that. We'll send him a little clip from this. Gwyneth Paltrow, talk to me about working with her. I mean, you've done some work with her. By the way, Kirstie Alley as well, too, in Radiant City. Isn't that correct?
Kirstie Alley, Lorraine Newman, and Maria Frakratzis, who was in My Big Fat Greek Wedding. All three of those women are funnier than, I mean, the collective of the four of us, it was hard to get work done because we spent an enormous amount of time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Doubled over laughing. And so Kirstie is a very, very funny woman. Lorraine is geniusly funny and kind and beautiful. And so, yes, that was a fantastic job. It was wonderful. And
gosh, would you have predicted any of this? I mean, you know, especially from that first moment,
no.
When you had the guts to say, hey, maybe the lead in your film. I mean, that was a gutsy thing to do. I get that. I've done stuff like that. And sometimes if you don't do that, you're going to still be sitting in the dress shop, right? You kind of have to.
Well, clearly, I didn't mean it in the first place. I never thought anybody was going to give me a job if I said that. I was just being flippant, but then he said I could be a hooker. And just, you know, I love experiences, so I went for the experience. I had no idea that this would alter my life, that I would find my way. And, you know, I was an actress with no credibility because I hadn't ever gone to acting school or done any of those things.
Right.
So I learned on the job, and I got a lot of jobs. And I was learning and learning and learning. I'm still learning. I mean, this is an ongoing theme. Keep on learning.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a short attention span. I have a large appetite for experiences.
Yeah.
And for humans. And so I know a lot of people. I have wonderful friends, and I love to try new things. That is just, I like to throw myself into something and do it.
The one woman show. Talk to me about that. You know, we were off camera. I was saying, how do you even remember all that? Talk to me about writing the one woman show, about what that's about, and why you even did a one woman show. Well, that's tough.
I did it because I had talked about doing a one woman show. I somewhere in my head, I thought I had something to say. And then it was talk. And then at one point I did write something, I think that was 3 hours long. And thank you to all the people who sat in my living room and let me read it to you. It was too long. But what I learned from that was I I left LA, moved to Toronto, and it was cold, and
Right.
I had left Los Angeles where it was hot, and all of a sudden I thought, I can't go out. I'm not going out till May. So I
Oh,
sat in my office and I thought, well, I'm going to do this thing I talked about. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And then I had friends who were very supportive. And then one of them, a director who I'd worked with a long time ago on a show called The Club, a very successful British director, was in Toronto. And somebody told me she wanted to see me and that she had heard I'd written a one woman show and she wanted to read it. So I sent it to
mm.
her thinking, I don't know. And she immediately said, I'm going to direct this. Everything fell into
Wow.
place. I honestly can just tell you that it was, and then 90 minutes of learning a show was the most terrifying thing I've ever done. That first night I stood on that stage, my legs hurt so much from tension. And all I
I'll
kept
bet.
thinking to myself was, nobody made you do this. You decided to do this. So could you go and have fun? And then I did. And I honestly got the best reviews of my life. I took it to LA. I did it in a lot of places. And I'm going to do it again. And
Oh, that'd be
because
fun. And I
I'm
hope
going
you
to
do
do
it
it
out
again
here. I would
because,
love to see it.
and
Yeah,
you're
go ahead.
invited, you're in the front row. So what it was about was about, I didn't know what it was about when I started writing it. I really,
I love
I,
that.
I wasn't what its theme was. I didn't know, but it ultimately was about my body of evidence. That's what it was about. And
Body of evidence.
that's kind of, it was about what it was like to be a fat teenager, a fat young woman who wasn't getting dated. And then when I lost a ton of weight, I was raped by the boy next door. And, mhm. And then I gained weight because it wasn't safe to be thin. And then I battled this weight and battled this thing. And I've done 38 diets, 8 of which probably could have killed me. And one day I got a movie in Montreal and I went and I had a day off and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was, I don't know, it was cold. It was Montreal. And I walked into a cafe and I was terrified this woman would say, haven't you had enough? Um,
Oh,
she took me to, that was crowded, and there was a table with this really good looking man sitting there. And I went, oh, no, I don't want to sit there. And she said, what's the only table? So I sat there, and this charming Frenchman who spoke no English and me had a conversation that
what?
had this weird conversation. It's an incredibly beautiful romantic story, but you have to read Getting Wasted to hear about it. But we are 40 years in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Let's talk about getting wasted, please. And again, that book is not about drinking. It's about your waist size. Talk to me about that, please.
WA.
That's one of my favorites. I love that book. Why don't you give people a little bit of a glimpse into
Okay.
that one?
Getting Wasted, spelt Waisted.
Right.
It really was born from my one woman show. Once I had a one woman show, then somebody had seen it, heard it, asked me to come and speak. And my very first speaking gig was at a group of 200 psychiatrists and therapists and health professionals. And I was the speaker talking about body image. And I said to them, I said, you're
Ah,
all therapists. Why don't you pull up your couch? I have every possible thing you could possibly make better. And we'll talk. And so I talked about body image and I talked about my struggles and I talked about how ridiculous it is that we should care so much about what people's bodies look like. Some people are born big or intended to be big. Some are thin. I like a box of chocolates. Can't we all be different flavors, different colors, different types? And, because I spent a lifetime fighting back people who bullied or teased, I'm pretty good at it. And
mm,
so I am genuinely believe that we're all flawed and all imperfect and all perfect. And if I have a brand about anything, I say that everyone wants us to change. I want us to make the best out of who we already are, and that is how I feel. So this one woman show took me to this book. It got the speaking thing going. Somebody said you should write a book. I said I've never written a book, and then I asked writer friends of mine what it would take, and I wrote a book proposal, which is harder than writing a book. I got an agent very quickly. I wrote the book. The book did incredibly well and served me well.
mm.
And hopefully it is, I believe it's like everything I write, it's just be you. You go be you and make it the best you can be. That's my message.
How do we do that? That's hard. It's really hard. Do we turn off the
Stop
TV, the
looking at the
social media
negative.
stuff? Say it
No,
again.
yes, we stop looking at the negative. We stop. Look, the gardeners are here. Hi. We stop looking at the negative, and we start looking at what works with us, because everybody has good stuff. Everybody does, and we spend so much time magnifying what we think other people are thinking about us. I don't think people are thinking that much about us, frankly. I think we're our own worst enemies. And so, we have bad hair days, good hair days. And on a bad hair day, you don't look that much worse. It's just us who've decided.
That is so true. Half the time you're sitting there, or any of us are sitting there thinking, oh my God, they're thinking this. They're not thinking of you at all. And if
No,
they are, we've got to get to ourselves to the point where it's like, so what? If I'm going to lose friends because they think I don't look quite the part, so what? Boy, that's taken me a lifetime to figure out, I have to tell you. And that
that
is
line
really true. Go ahead.
where they say what other people think about us is none of our business is actually true. It
Mm,
doesn't matter what people think about us, because we're just one blip in their day, and then they're on to the next. If they're those kind of people who are judging, 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 um, the only person who matters really first is yourself.
yeah, yeah. I do want to mention something about the book, this book, Oops,
Well,
that I
please.
really love. That at the end of each, and I actually have some little bits that I footnoted. But you know what I thought was kind of fun? At the end of each chapter, hang on, why can't I find it? All of a sudden, when I look for something, it's not there. Recommended medication. Please, would you tell us what that is? As I read the first chapter and the second, I thought, oh, this is great. Let me just read this one, right? Recommended medication. This will give people an idea. Cinnamon sugar coated churros, perfect for snacking and recovering from old traumas. And you have various antidotes, such as that. Your favorite recommended medications. What made you do that? I loved it. It was so funny at the end of each chapter. It really made me smile.
Well, I think after a hard day, I mean, it depends what your go-to is. Mine would traditionally be chocolate or French fries.
Mm,
If it's been a really bad day, and I know better that food shouldn't be my
I know.
comfort zone, but frankly, it is for a lot of people. So maybe moderation is good, but I think after a really hard day, you just want to snuggle up, pull the blanket over you, get into your own little tent, and do the best you can do. And sometimes food is that comfort, or a little drink or something. I don't know. If we're not falling apart from it and allowing it to rule us, I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
Thank God body image is starting to change, right? You don't have to be. Now
Unbelievable.
you divide your time between Toronto and LA. You know what it's like in LA. If you're a size 2, you are overweight. It don't even bother showing up to the table, right? I mean, you're too big. So that's a tough one. I had to give that one up a long time ago.
There's a
Um,
story in my book where my husband was at Whole Foods, and there's a woman who is a very attractive older woman,
uh,
with a nice shape, not thin, not fat. But she was drinking a green drink like this. And my husband said, "Well, that looks really healthy." She said, "I hate them. I do it every day. And I've done it for months and I haven't lost an ounce." And he looked at her and he said, "Well, why do you think you have to? You're a beautiful woman." And she turned to him and she said, "Well, you're not from around here, are you?"
oh my gosh. I know you almost have to just give it up because, I would show up at school meetings and I was always amazed, how they put out little like muffins and things for the
Mhm.
parents, right? The coffee, the muffins. Everybody would most people would show up with these giant Starbucks black coffee and drink it throughout the meeting. And I'd be looking over at the muffins. They'd be speaking my name. They'd be calling me. They'd be yelling at me. And I would just wait for the meeting to finish so that they could get out of the room and I could sort of put my little muffins and everything on the plate. And I would think, why can't I be like that, like them, and just walk out with my big dark coffee? And I said to myself, because that's just not who I am,
Because
right?
you're real.
So yeah, that's just the way it is. So I get it. I get you. I really, really do. If you don't mind, let's talk about that other book of yours. Oh my God, how children see God. Tell us about that?
Okay,
Why'd
so
you write it too?
OMG, How Children See God was a
Yeah,
book
yeah.
that when I finished Getting Wasted, my publisher said, what do you want to write next? And I didn't really know. But I remembered that when our son was 7, he came to us and he said, okay, so who's this God guy? I
Hmm.
hear God all the time. And I said, well, in our house, we believe that God is inside every living thing, whether it's a tree or a person. And God, for me, is 1010 away from goodness, from good.
Hmm.
So that's what we believe. So the next day, he came into our bedroom and he said, I know who's seen God. I said, who? He said, my doctor, when he cuts people open. Ta-da! And I thought it was such a
That's
great
adorable.
image. And it stuck with me. And when I was talking to them, I said, I'm curious. Kids today, we're growing up in a world where either it's fundamentalist or it's completely the opposite, where there's no religion. And I want to know what kids are thinking about God. So I interviewed, about 100 kids from
Great
every
book.
economic, literally, I didn't from every race, from every financial structure. And it was really a revelation. To be honest, they were so, children, it's like Art Linkletter. They do say the darndest things.
Yeah.
And they did their drawings. All the drawings are theirs. And they're
Stunning.
funny or touching. One of my favorites is when this kid drew God with a giant dinner plate behind his head and a bed sheet.
Yeah. That's a funny one. That
I
is
mean,
it's
there's
so
some
brilliant.
really funny things, and they say touching things. One little girl said that God is in her lunchbox to make sure she gets to school safe every day. They were,
Oh,
yeah, they were beautiful. Kids who were dealing with sick parents or the loss of a parent or divorce, they had interesting things to say. So it's kind of a perennial. I think it's one of those books that just doesn't go out of favor, you know?
no, and it's a beautiful book for us as adults to pick up more than anything because we need a little of that
Yeah.
in our lives, actually, a lot of that in our lives to get the child back in us, to get that sense of wonder about and curiosity that so many of us start to lose after a while because life beats us down, don't you think?
Yes, I do. And I
Yeah,
think we're living in very stressful times, especially
yeah,
now. And so again, I'm really an incredibly fortunate human being. I always think if my toast falls on the ground, it's going to fall butter side up. I have a very optimistic personality, and I that doesn't mean to say that I don't have bad days, but when I do, I really work very hard at trying to find something beautiful to look at, or or spend time with somebody who is upbeat and generous of heart, and you know remind myself that really there are great people in this world. Not everybody is
yeah,
what we see in headlines.
yeah. Before I let you go, would you talk to me a little bit about the Sisterhood Connection? What's that? Because I want to be a part of it, please.
You are
I
part of
love
it.
it.
Okay, the
Thanks.
Sisterhood Connection, which I started really before the pandemic and has been on hold, but is, soon to be rebirthed. What I want to do is unite fantastic women globally, have
Hmm.
the giant rat pack of awesome women, and have them really come together with all our various skills and input and ideas and share and ultimately reach out to younger women who I think need guidance, need grown-ups, need to know about our mistakes, need to know you can recover from mistakes. That's a huge one. And in Oops, I Forgot to Save Money, I mean, I interviewed 100 women,
Yeah.
and I was amazed at women's stories. And what I really learned is if we face the truth, so this is also about the Sisterhood Connection, is about everything. If we own the truth of ourselves, and then we can help others, because I've made so many mistakes. I'm a constant work in progress, and a progress, I hope. And, so I see that we can recover. You
Hmm.
know, people who do bad things can recover. They just need
Yeah.
help. So that's what that's for. And I hope.
What's next? Ooh, I'm
What's
sorry.
next?
Yeah.
I'm
What's
writing,
next?
I'm
What you doing
writing,
next?
I'm writing a novel, my first novel, and I can't really talk about it, but I do say that,
Oh,
well, what I do say is that a woman who's been spurned has better resources than the FBI for revenge, I think. Um,
I like that, Monica. I like that. Ooh, I can't wait to read this. That's fantastic. And you're so clever I mean, because you have this really quite a world of experience, and I really mean that. Just from the first time you said, I'd like to be the lead. I mean, you've got spunk, and that spunk has stayed with you your whole life, plus a really positive attitude that clearly you must have been born with that one, because it's hard for some of us, who want to just look at, one day they wake up like this. And I think you always manage to make sure that you end up like this at the end of the day, but you work hard at it, right? But you've done so much. So I can't wait to read this one. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Thank you. Um, yeah, I don't know if I was born with it, but it's certainly a choice. I mean, if you take two choices and one is to live in misery or one is to find the upside of things, yeah, I'm wired to find the upside of things, and I choose my friends very judiciously in that way. Negative people are a no go.
Yeah.
They just, what's the point? They don't help.
I have something to say about that. And don't keep trying to make them see who you are. That's something I'll do. It's like, no, but wait a minute. But look, it's like, no. Run. Go to the door and just keep going. Close it nicely and just walk away, because it never really works out. That's lesson learned, and you seem to have learned that early on. You don't need to impress them. Just go. I like that.
A short little story. There was
Yeah.
a man, a writer, who was very difficult, and he was at that time married to a girlfriend of mine. And he one day stuck his finger in my face and he said, "You know what your problem is?" And I said,
Ugh.
"I have a feeling you're going to tell me." And he said, "All you ever want to have is a good time." And I burst out laughing. And I said, "Yeah, true, guilty. I do."
I love that. Good, Monica. Good. That's all I have to say. Gosh, thank you. So you're working on your fourth book, one woman show to be coming out sometime
I'm going to
soon,
redo
right?
this. Yeah, I'm going to do my one show again. Definitely.
Oh,
I
that
can
I'm looking
write
forward
another
to.
one.
And yeah, and then the Sisterhood Connection. Anything else you want to add that would be valuable for our audience to learn more about you? If they're struggling, if they have a story in them, anything you'd like to share before I let you go?
Wow. If you've got a story and you write it down, if not for publication, write it down to get it out of your body. I mean,
Yes.
sometimes if you're struggling with things and you're sitting there and you think you have something to say to somebody, I think that writing things down, we're living in a world where everything is these flash bits, bites, sound bites, that I think that we need to have campfire stories, be with
Hmm.
our friends, share stories, surround each other with love and hugs. And I don't mean to sound like Pollyanna, but I think it works.
Stories. I like that. Share stories.
Yeah,
Sound bites, leave that to the news.
right.
Stories. We have to converse like the way we converse. We got
Yeah.
to know a little bit about Monica Parker today because we talked about it, right? And you're right. We need a lot more of that. Gosh, Monica, thank you so much. People, please pick this up. Oops, I forgot to save money. And it
And
looks
please
like I
know on
wasn't
the
alone.
back that the lovely Jean Smart, who is so genius
Yes.
in hacks, gave me
Yes.
a
Yes.
great response. And she is, I'm so grateful for her input and for all the women who have come and people who have contributed to this book. And so, yes, please buy my book.
I would love to interview her one day. She is so sassy and wise. And yes, she wrote something wonderful in the back of this book from Designing Women, in case anyone didn't quite connect the name. Yeah, that was terrific that she wrote on the back. So thank you so much. Thank you, Jean, for that. I appreciate it. And thank you, Monica, for joining us on our
Thank
show today. Deborah Kobylt Live. I look forward to our coffee. At the moment, you're here in California, so hopefully we can make that work one of these days. I would really
you.
enjoy meeting you in person, right? Zoom sort of become a friend to all of us, but it'd be nice to connect in person. So thanks everybody for joining us. Please pick up her book. Go on her website. She'll let you know when she may be in town doing a one-woman show or anything else that she's got going on. So thank you very much, Monica Parker, and everybody. Our show, Deborah Kobylt Live, was sponsored today by Sambuco. We're going to have a little commercial at the end of our show, Sambuco Vitamins. So thank you. You can find our show on all audio and video platforms, and invite your friends too. We appreciate it. We appreciate the connection. So thank you again, and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.
There's nothing more important than taking care of yourself, and if you're not feeling your best, you can't be your best for anyone else either. I've been using Sambucol to help support my immune system, and I've noticed a huge difference in how I feel. I'm more alert, I have more energy, and I believe that's because Sambucol is powered by nature's superfruit, black elderberry. It's good for me, and it's combined with vitamin C and zinc, too. I feel that Sambucol really helps to keep my immune system strong, particularly during these times. And they have these super delicious all-natural gummies, powder to add to my water, chewable tablets, and a syrup that tastes amazing. Get 15% off of your order of $9.99 or more at sambucol.com. Use DEB15 for your special 15% off discount. That's sambucol.com and mark down DEB15 and join me in keeping a healthy immune